Welcome in to a brand new edition of Catfish and Ice with your host Chad Minton and Max Greenberg. How you doing, Max?
Not too bad. How are you?
I'm good, man. Excited to talk that hockey with you tonight.
Oh, yeah.
We're on Stanley Cup Final Eve, and you know what? I went back and looked, Max, right before we went live. I'm having some deja vu a little bit here, man. I went back to episode 234 of Catfish and Ice. You want to know the significance of that episode?
Give it to me. What happened?
We previewed the Oilers and the Panthers Stanley Cup final matchup, and we're going to do that again tonight.
Yep.
So 35 episoepisodes later, and we're doing the same thing?
Same thing. Man, the NHL, I mean, not going to go on a rant about this. The NHL lately has really become predictable. I mean, I feel like it's good hockey we're going to see, but man, we had a lot of the same results lately.
To push back on that, and I do agree, but to push back on that, this is only the third time since like 1984, I'm going to put it on the screen, that there's been a consecutive rematch of Stanley Cup. It doesn't happen often, but also it's not like these two teams aren't very deserving. I got to give you some credit, Max. In our last episode, I took Dallas to get past Edmonton, and I was very, very wrong on that. We got to talk about Dallas a little bit, though. They are in a mess. They are in our neighborhood. They're in our division. It's kind of fun from a Preds fan point of view to see your division rival mess up badly, but at the same time, that there's a lot of drama going on.
There is.
In the organization. I mean,
I think Edmonton. I didn't think it'd be like that, though. I thought it'd go to at least 6.
I mean, to pull Ottinger in your franchise goalie in the first few minutes of an elimination game, just based on giving up a couple goals. Yeah, they were soft goals. They weren't good, but
were they that soft?
I mean, hey. Everyone knows me. I'm a goalie apologist. I apologize for UC Saros all the time. So everyone here is already probably saying, oh, here goes Chad defending the goalie again. But I cannot understand what Pete DeBoer was thinking, pulling his franchise goalie.
And the explanation he gave was very weird, too. Like, after the third goal, I could have understood it, but, like, after just 2 goals, and like the second goal he gave up was like a clear break. Like the goal where he got pulled was certainly not his fault.
You should believe it.
You should have pulling him
that early in the game. You should have total confidence in the rest of your team with all that time still left to make that up. Yeah, it's not an ideal start. No one wants to go down 2-0 in the first couple of minutes of a game. It's not ideal, but it was almost like he said, oh, this can't get any worse. I got to get this guy out of here. It's weird. It's totally weird. And again,
he should have I'm not suggesting he should have done this, but if there's anything he should have done, he should have like really flipped the forward lines and defensive pairings.
And again, I want to give you total credit again, Max. You questioned Pete DeBoer, and what, I said in the last episode, this guy is taking all these teams to conference finals. His teams are always there, but wow, he looks bad now. He might not even make it to next year. They might have to make a decision.
I heard some of the players are not happy about how that was handled.
They might have to make a decision between Ottinger, their franchise goalie, or DeBoer. Some analysts out there are saying, oh, it's going to be squashed. It'll be taken care of. They have an whole off season to deal with it, and it'll be fine. But I don't know.
And let's also, I mean, that one thing happened. Let's also remember, it's not even just that. Chris Knobloch coached circles around Pete DeBoer in that series. I mean, everything they did, the Oilers were there, and Pete DeBoer did not have any answers, no adjustments, nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, it was tactical outside. I mean, everything. The Oilers just were so far dominant. It was insane.
I mean, let's just talk about the look. First of all, before we get into all that, we're gonna do a Stanley Cup preview. Let's tell you what we got in store for you. Besides previewing the Stanley Cup final, the rematch between the Panthers and the Oilers, going to be so incredibly difficult to predict this series. But me and Max are going to try to do it.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. Let me save it for when I get to it. But other than that, we have a lot of Preds talk to get into tonight, guys. I know you're here for the Preds. We are a Preds podcast, and we're going to do it. It's that time of year where if you are following a team like the Predators, who have been out of it for so long, there's not a lot of news out there. I mean, the team's kind of laying low. There's not a lot out there, except for Jonathan Marchessault is jumping into these trade rumors. And, you could look at it as, oh, this is just for clicks. People got to write about something this time of year.
I mean, I'm not saying I think it's going to happen, but there seems like there's some real legs to it.
Yeah. I mean, clearly in the exit interviews, Marchessault did not seem very happy with the playing style of the team. Maybe a subtle shot at Andrew Burnett, who is coming back, obviously. So it's like, how's that rift going to work out? It's one thing to have a bottom six guy, a fringe starter, have qualms with the coach, but when it's a guy of Marchessault's stature on the team as a likely top line guy, you can't have that rift. We just got done talking about Ottinger and the Stars and that rift that could happen. Well, I mean, it's maybe not a franchise goalie, but Jonathan Marchessault, 5-year deal. He still got 4 years left on his deal. With the salary cap going up, I don't think his contract doesn't look that bad AAV wise.
No,
but he's also got a no move clause, a 15-team no move clause, which could make things complicated.
I thought it was a full no move clause.
It is a full no move.
Oh, okay.
No. It's according to Puckpedia.
Oh, really?
It's a 15-team no trade list.
I thought
there's a lot of confusion going around.
Yeah.
And I mean, who knows what the exact, I don't know. Puckpedia could be wrong, but I'll pull it up right now because I looked at it before we went on. I'll pull up Jonathan Marchessault's.
And kind of thinking about, while you do that, potential reasons, why he might want to leave. And I when I'm about to say this, I honestly forgot if it was him or Stamkos. It might have been both, but I thought I heard from Marchessault. He said something like at the end of the year, like, I didn't move my family here to not make the playoffs. So, maybe if the Preds are thinking they're not going to be a playoff team next year, he's like, well, I'm in my 30s. I want to win or like go home to Montreal, which is one of the teams he's talked about going to.
Yeah. Let me put it up on the screen real quick. What I'm seeing I'm literally reading it right now on Puckpedia, which is the go-to source now that we don't have Cat Friendly anymore. But let me present it on the screen. But it's a 15-team no move clause. That's what it says on Puckpedia's website. So unless their information's wrong, then that's where we sit. So let's just get it on the screen there.
Looks like a full no move to me.
15.
Okay, I didn't click on that. You're right. All right.
Cannot be traded, sent to minors or waived without player approval. But that is what we got to get into. And that's what we're going to say for the segment. It doesn't mean he won't be traded. It just makes it more complicated. Right. And Jonathan Marchessault holds the cards.
Yep, sure does.
So we'll revisit that for that segment, but there's a lot to say about that for sure. Puckpedia, though, for sure is the go-to source now, and I love that website. Fun fact, way back in the day, that Puckpedia, the guy who runs that website, came on our podcast when we were an infant podcast.
Really?
And we had to beg people to come on this podcast because we had nothing. And his site hadn't jumped really up yet. And so I'm so happy to see the success of that website because they were extremely grateful and nice to us. We were grateful to them for coming on our podcast in the early days. Love to get them back on, but of course they have gotten very big without Cap Friendly. Right. They have filled that void perfectly. Now that Cap Friendly is not around. And so anyway, so we really got to get into that. And then I want to do a prospect pool deep dive for the Predators as we're about 3 weeks away, give or take, around a little over 3 weeks away from the entry draft. June 27th is the first round of the NHL entry draft. So we got about 24 days leading up to the draft. So I want to do a prospect pool deep dive for the Predators because I've I've scoured through a lot of rankings by all the scouts. You know, The Athletic, Scott Wheeler's a really popular one. He ranks his prospects, but you've got all these popular accounts you can follow of these scouts who this is literally a 365-day a year job for them. They watch these prospects all around the world, all of these different leagues in North America. And they compile these algorithms and these scouting reports and they project where these prospects are going to end up. Are they going to be a top 6? Are they going to be this? Are they going to be that? It's so much. It's like incredible what these scouts do. But the overall consensus I'm getting is if anything, the Preds prospect pool as a whole has gone down in their rankings. They were kind of flirting with top 10 status, but a lot of that was due to Yaroslav Askarov being in there ever since he has left the prospect pool. And you've had some guys graduate. You know, I would say Fedor Svechkov has graduated.
Yes.
Wouldn't you agree? We don't call him a prospect
No,
anymore.
I would say the same for Zachary Leroux.
Zachary Leroux has graduated. So, like, I mean,
for example, though, someone like Matthew Wood, who played like 3 games, he's still a prospect. He's
still
not
absolutely a prospect. But I do think the Preds prospect pool does not have – they're not deep anymore. They don't have a lot – I mean, just because you don't think they have a superstar in their prospect pool or a lot of superstars doesn't mean it won't happen. You're just projecting. You're trying to predict, and it's obviously not a perfect science. Right. I'm just going off of what the scouts are saying about our prospect pool, and it's very middle of the road. It's not the worst. We're not the Tampa Bay Lightning who have – the Tampa Bay Lightning, and I'm down here in Tampa, they're in a very precarious situation right now because they don't have any first round picks coming up. They're not going to be able to do anything in the draft unless they trade or figure out something. And so they're the type of franchise where they're about to really they kind of spent their window. Their window is shut. They got 2 Stanley Cups out of it, so I think they'll be okay. Their fans will be just fine. But that's just kind of goes to show you how it works. Now, a team like the Tampa Bay Lightning, they have to begin to reload their prospect pool, and that takes years and years to do.
Yeah.
You look at a team like the Predators, they're kind of in the middle, according to scouts. They've got some guys, and we're going to talk about some of these guys. I got my top 5 superstar potential prospects that are in the prospect pool for the Predators. And I got to say, this exercise was a little humbling for me because once I got to number 4, number 5, I had to kind of take some reaches. I had to kind of stretch a little bit. So we'll talk about that. We got to talk about we're going to talk about free agency, but we're going to talk about it from the lens of depth players. Because me and Max are both in agreement. We were talking about it right before we went on live, that we don't think the Predators are going to make a big splash in free agency. Nothing like 2024.
Right.
So, but they do have a decent amount of projected cap space this offseason. They can definitely go out there and make some purchases and do some things. So we got to look at some depth players they might go after. So we'll do that as well. So that's what we got on the slate for episode 269 of Catfish and Ice, presented by DraftKings with promo code THPN. And we'll tell you more about the offer we have with DraftKings using that promo code in the middle of this episode. So, Max, let's get right to it with our Stanley Cup preview, a rematch. And let's get into it now, Max, with first of all, what got these two teams here? Tell me what makes these teams so good and why they're where they're at.
Well, Florida, they're the defending champions. They're deep as hell. I mean, they're a defensive powerhouse. They're super physical, and like you said, they, like it or not, they live and die by that style. I mean, Florida just has a million ways they can kill you. Like I said, their roster's insane. I mean, Sergei Bobrovsky. I mean, what more needs to be said there? Paul Maurice. I mean, they are truly a machine in every sense of the word. And it's no surprise that this is their 3rd year in the final. Edmonton, on the other hand, they're not the better team on paper, but they are playing. And this is what I said in the last episode. We were predicting the Cup Finals. They are playing just incredible hockey right now. And they're number one, they are super resilient. They were down 2-0 to LA, where they were looking totally outplayed. And granted, LA made a lot of mistakes, but the Oilers did not. They did not beat themselves, and they got back in that series and won it. And ever since that, they've been playing unstoppable hockey. And also part of the thing about Edmonton is, back in the day, they used to be the team that, they had to rely on McDavid and Draisaitl, and they had to score like 4 or 5 goals a game to have a chance. Nowadays, they can win in a bunch of different ways. Of course they can still score, but they're playing about as good defensively as I've ever seen. Against Dallas, they put on a masterclass in terms of trap hockey, and they're playing more intimidating. And, I remember they were talking on the ESPN broadcast, I believe, before like game 2 or whatever it was, how they've kind of taken a page out of the Panthers book in terms of playing, more physical, more intimidating. And a lot of those adjustments to how they've played, I would give a lot of credit to Chris Knobloch. As much talent as the Oilers have, they're playing such good defensive hockey right now. And that was mostly without Mattias Ekholm. That's another thing I said. They were doing it without Mattias Ekholm. Now they've got him back. And again, just the way they are playing, they still have everything that made him great, but they've added, they're resilient as hell, but they've started to play with better defensively and with more physicality. And they're playing, they may not be the most complete team on paper, but they are playing like a complete machine right now.
We all know that throw your rosters on paper out the window. We're Preds fans. We already got a bad taste of that. No, I mean, look, both these teams are very deserving to be here. There's no flukes here. There's not like, oh, what is this team doing here? No, these two teams, I mean, I know it's a rematch and people are kind of bored with it already, but it's like most pure hockey fans are not bored with it. I mean, this is a all-time matchup. It's going to get great ratings. I already expect that. I mean, nothing's more juicy than a rematch, especially considering last year's Stanley Cup final went to 7 games. Florida was up,
but yes.
Florida was up 3-0 in that series, and Edmonton won 3 in a row. And it kind of freaks me out how fast this past year went by because I feel like we just did this segment.
I know, man.
I'm having some serious deja vu right now. It's crazy. But I had also just moved into this house where I record now when we did this. So like everything's kind of coming full. It's weird. But anyway, so yeah, it's fun to talk about this series. I got it on the screen there. The Look is what it's being called. And it's after the Stars won game 1. And the look from Connor McDavid. And I mean, look, I got to stop getting burned by betting against Connor McDavid, the best player in the world and the best player of our generation. But it's like, I'm going to screw up and do it again. I still think Florida is going to win this series. I think Bobrovsky is going to be a major X factor in this series. I think the Panthers' depth is going to be I think they're going to wear down Edmonton in a couple games. I still think Connor McDavid's going to do magical things. Predicting the number of games it goes, I mean, who the hell knows? It's hockey. But if I got to put a number on it, I'm going to take Panthers in 6. All right. Putting it out there. So I took Dallas in the last series, and I was completely wrong. But I'm not going to stop predicting. I might be wrong again. This series is going to be incredibly hard to predict. But if I got to make a prediction, if someone's forced me to do it, i.e., I'm forcing myself to do it right now on this podcast, I'm going to take Panthers in 6. And I could be completely wrong. It could be Oilers in 5 for all I know. I don't think the Panthers are going to get punked like that. I don't think either team's going to get punked like that. It's going to be a very competitive series. I don't see any team getting embarrassed necessarily. I just think the Panthers' depth is going to wear down the Oilers a little too much. And Connor McDavid's going to do everything he can. And we're going to have a narrative of back-to-back Stanley Cup champion Florida Panthers. And we're going to have a narrative of where does Connor McDavid go from here, leaving another season without a Stanley Cup yet. Yeah, that's what I'm predicting.
So here's where I'm kind of going with my prediction. So, of course, like I say, Florida, better team on paper. But here's what I'm looking at. Like I said, Edmonton, they're playing much better defensive hockey, and they're playing with more physicality now. And even in goal, Stuart Skinner certainly is not Sergei Bobrovsky, but he's playing good hockey right now. Admittedly, he's a very hot and cold goaltender, but he's playing really good hockey right now. And I ultimately think it's going to be a lot of low-scoring hockey because, again, Florida's defensive machine. Edmonton, they're playing really good trap hockey right now.
Mm-hmm.
To me, the X factor in this series is Edmonton's speed. Edmonton's playing a lot. They're taking more of a page out of Florida's book. And also, what you just saw on the screen a second ago, and kind of what I said earlier, that the look, kind of what you said, Oilers being 4-0 after the look, and that kind of boils down to, resilience and not making the same mistake multiple times. Edmonton had that game one where they let a barrage of goals in the third period on the power play. After that one period, they were the better team the whole rest of the series.
Can I throw another? I hear everything you're saying. Can I throw another X factor into this series?
Sure.
We don't talk about the head coaches enough. You brought up Knobloch just now, the head coach of the Oilers, who hasn't been around long. November 2023. Which every NHL head coach gets recycled like crazy around these days. So no NHL head coach outside of John Cooper and Rod Brindamore have been around very long. But I think the coaching is going to be an X factor here. And Paul Maurice has, for rightfully so, taken his team to 3 straight Stanley Cup finals. I mean, I think Paul Maurice could out-coach Knobloch in this series as well.
That's certainly possible, but still, Chris Knobloch right now has his boys dialed in. They are playing disciplined hockey, and they are not beating themselves. And that's something that people fail to realize, and it took me a while too. Instead of part of it being a winner, besides just being a great team, is not making the mistakes that kill you. And Edmonton right now is not making the mistakes that kill them. They are doing everything to help themselves right now. And
something the Preds did nonstop.
Right. But still, looking at it, goaltender, Florida's probably better, but Stuart Skinner playing a really good hockey right now. Defensively, Florida's better. Edmonton's still playing really good defensive hockey, though. Physicality, Florida's more physical, but Edmonton's playing super physical right now. They can potentially match it.
How about this? I'm going to put this on the screen. I found this very interesting from Mike Kelly of the NHL Network. Why is Florida in a third straight cup final? It won 58 games in 21-22 and got smoked in the second round by Tampa. The Panthers didn't run it back. They made significant roster changes and, most importantly, changed the way they play. Paul Maurice took over and laid it all out before he ever stepped foot behind the bench. I found that really stood out to me when I was scrolling today and I was prepping for this segment, and I was looking at, what the Panthers have done as an organization has been really amazing. To go out and get Brad Marchand, so just snuck in there and grabbed him, but to also elevate the players they knew were important to their organization. Sam Bennett, who I think is going to stick with this team. I don't think he's going anywhere in free agency, even though I can dream of him being in a Preds sweater. But not going to happen. But that organization from top to bottom is so well run. And it's something to aspire to if you're a team like the Predators. And what really sticks out in that tweet from Mike Kelly is change the way they play. I think that's something the Predators need to take a page from. They're going to have to change the way they play. If they're ever, if you got to check your ego at the door. If you're Andrew Burnett and think, hey, maybe all of my coaching philosophies aren't right. Maybe I'm a young head coach. Maybe I got to make some changes. Maybe I got to look myself in the mirror and think I need to start changing some things about the way I coach the game.
Anyway, though, so going back to what I was saying, I think that, Edmonton, Florida, despite that, they might still be the better team in terms of a lot of things I just said. Edmonton's playing a lot better, and I have confidence that they can match those. Maybe if they're not quite the better team in those categories, but Florida cannot match Edmonton's speed. They can't, and we saw it last year. And I don't really think that's changed at all. And also with Edmonton playing such good hockey right now and them being so dialed in, I think it's going to be Edmonton winning this series in 7 games.
Okay.
And what's funny? Last year you had Edmonton and I had Florida. This year we're flipping it.
Yeah. I mean, well, I'm going 6 too. I'm not even going 7. I mean, you've called it right, man, and you even had a really good bracket.
And what's
These
funny is
entire
I had the
playoffs.
Panthers repeating in that bracket, but I've changed my mind.
You're the opposite of PK Subban, who had the worst bracket ever possibly constructed.
Which that could have happened. These playoffs were hard to predict.
They were. They were
I mean,
very hard.
I haven't been this right in a long time.
Well, you know what, man? You've called a lot of things right lately, and I respect you for that, for sure. But
I cannot wait
fun.
for this. It's literally a toss-up, go either way. But I think Edmonton is going to do it. It just feels like their time. It just does.
And that's what the league wants. I mean, this is a situation where the league can. I mean, yeah, of course, you don't always like rematches. But I mean, the only people who are mad about a rematch are Stars fans.
I'll say if this happens next year, I might be a little okay. I'm kind of bored of it. I'll take it for this one more year. I'll take it for one more year.
Yeah, there you go. It's not going to happen 3 years in a row. I don't think.
You never know.
Who knows? You never know.
You never know.
You're right.
The rich get richer. You know what they say.
So let's get into the Jonathan Marchessault stuff here that we already teased in the intro. Max, what do you take from this? I mean, the overall takeaway and the overall narrative is that the Predators are kind of trapped right now when it comes to getting away from their free agency splash of 2024. They kind of got to live with it. They got to hope it does much better in year 2. That's kind of the overall narrative. We've pretty much come to agreement that Steven Stamkos is going to be here for a while. Brady Shea's contract looks worse and worse every time you look at it. He's not going anywhere.
Right.
But Jonathan Marchessault is, if you judge out of the 3 of those contracts, he's the easier one to move, but that no move clause, he holds the cards.
Right.
But it seems like there's already sources saying that he's open to being moved to the right situation. We've seen the Montreal Canadiens be brought up in that. So let's get it out there first. And I'll go ahead and give you what I think the Predators would have to do. Let's say Marchessault is open to being traded. Let's say he agrees, picks a team that he's willing to waive his no trade clause. A lot of hoops that you have to jump through to make this even happen. But let's say it happens. I am not desperate to move on from Jonathan Marchessault. If I'm sitting in the GM seat of the Nashville Predators front office right now, I am not desperate to move him. If the price is right, of course you move him. Especially if he's not happy being here. That's really the X
factor.
Where
a lot of it boils down to.
That is what it boils down to, is just how unhappy
that's not the only thing it does, but that's probably.
And we don't really know that. I mean, we can all read the tea leaves.
We won't know. We won't.
We can read the tea leaves. We can make speculations. We don't know just how unhappy.
Unless he just goes to the media and says, "Oh, I'm pissed," then no, you don't know.
And he hasn't done that.
And I don't think he will. I don't think
he's made hints. He's made whatever. And there's always going to be stories written. There's always going to be clicks. There's always going to be this and that. But if indeed he is pretty upset and he behind closed doors in front office, Trotz gets that wind of that, and he realizes, okay, this guy, I got an unhappy veteran here who's only going to disrupt things. I got to move on from this. He's willing to waive his trade clause. You've got to get younger. It goes without saying that you've got to make sure you got to hold the cards here. You got to hold the position of power if you're Trotz, and not trade Marchessault out of desperation. That's really what I'm getting at here. It can't be that situation here because you're going to get burned again. Trotz is going to set himself up to get burned on he's already been burned enough already.
Right.
He doesn't need to set it. If he can flip Marchessault for a really, really good prospect, we're going to talk about the prospect pool and how it's not deep anymore. It's very top heavy. The Preds prospect pool is right now. If he could beef up that prospect pool by flipping Marchessault, then I'm all for it. But that's what it's going to take for me. You got to get a bona fide, really blue chip prospect out of Jonathan Marchessault.
So, yeah, I mean, obviously, like you said, a lot of moving parts. Number one, is there a team interested to trade for him with that term on his contract? That's kind of where it starts. I mean, maybe not great where it starts, but number two, will he agree to a deal? Number three, will Barry Trotz agree to move to him? I mean, again, there's a ton of hurdles to overcome here. Yeah, and I agree. Of all the free agents the Preds signed last year, Marchessault is the one that looks that you can be the most okay with, because he is only making $5.5 million. And honestly, the way he played last year overall, he wasn't great the whole year. His start especially was terrible, but overall, I would say he was reasonably worth that $5.5 million. And
yeah,
so again, you don't want to, like you said, Chad, you don't want to get desperate, and ideally, you want to get as good of a return as you can get. Again, that 5.5, maybe not $5.5 million, but just the term on that deal might scare teams away. Now, maybe the Preds retain a little bit of salary, which they're doing a lot of already.
I don't agree with that.
But if they do, that might make for. I'm not saying the Preds should do that.
I get what you're saying.
From another team's perspective, that might make it more palatable. But yeah, again, it's gonna, like you said, it's gonna be to whatever. It has to be to one of the 15 teams that Marchessault is okay with. And the team I focus most on, the team that's been thrown out the most, is the Montreal Canadiens, because he's from Quebec and he'd be going home. That'd probably be what he wants. I think it was Frank Saravalli who was saying in a perfect world, that's what he would want. One player I looked at, and it was actually discussed in our Predlines group chat. One player that was thrown out there was Patrick Laine, who's in the last year of his contract. I'm not saying you don't just do it like a 1-for-1 swap, but you got to think, for a guy like Laine, he's 27 years old. So what you're potentially looking at is, you could potentially, if things go really well, maybe you got a guy for the future. Or if not, you trade him at the upcoming deadline, you get assets back. So, that's one player that could potentially pique my interest. Although I'd probably think the Preds would want to get more of the assets back in return, because even though Laine's deal is not as big, he's making more per year. It's an $8 million deal, and he played fourth line minutes last year. So his value has got to be down at this point. And of course, he's had a lot of stuff such as injuries, and he's been with the NHL Player Assistance Program and stuff. So, and the guy's been all over the place in the past few years. And granted, I don't necessarily think of him as a guy that Trotz would want to go after, but even then, that's one player that I might be open to.
Yeah.
Like you said, there's a lot of just a ton of moving parts. Every little piece is going to have to work. And like I said on the screen right there, the list of teams he'd go to is really small.
The whole no tax thing is a big narrative right now, storyline going on in the NHL offseason. These teams are, over the last few years, are performing really well and going deep in the playoffs, and they all have a lot in common, being no state and income tax states. I don't want to get into that whole thing too deep.
If you went home to Montreal, that might be a bit of an exception.
But my point is, as much as I think it's kind of an overblown story right now, it might be one factor into. In fact, there's no might about it. It's definitely a factor. There's certain players who might be torn between two teams, and the final deciding factor on which team they choose might end up being, oh, that team has no state income tax, I'm going to go there. I get to keep more of my money. We're not, this isn't groundbreaking news here, but for some reason it is this offseason. Everyone's focusing on it.
That's a big reason why I move back to Nashville, besides the fact the Preds are in town. That's the biggest reason.
But so yeah, maybe that could be a factor into where Marchessault wants to go. He's gotten used to playing for two different teams. His last two teams have been no state income tax states. So yeah, that could have something to do with it as well.
He's only played in Florida, Nevada, and Tennessee, all states with no state income tax. Yeah. He played in Tampa Bay before he played for the Panthers. So yeah, he's played for 4 teams, all of which have been states with no state income tax.
So it's kind of hard to ask a player to suddenly say, "Oh, hey, we're going to start taxing you a lot now." Right. So I get it. It's definitely
millionaires, but still,
it's definitely a factor.
Yeah, it makes sense though why he would not want to go to a state without state income tax.
But let's think about it this way. Let's say the Predators did trade Marchessault, and let's say that they don't get anyone in return, which I don't think they will, to replace Marchessault in the top 6, that means they'll have to elevate somebody. Luke Evangelista is, I mean, if Marchessault's not on the team, let's say he's traded and the Predators they're not going to do a 1-for-1 swap for Marchessault. They can play on the top. Like, I just don't think it
doesn't really make sense to do that.
It's just not going to happen. So I think whoever they get in return for Marchessault, if they were to make this happen, is going to be someone who is going to have a long-term future impact, but not an immediate impact this season. So that means there's a void left for Marchessault. And I think, Luca, another way that I think this trade has to happen is if Barry Trotz has a lot of confidence in Luke Evangelista as a right wing. Marchessault's a right wing. I mean, that's another part of it. Also, we have to wait and see what happens with this draft. I mean, you've got a really good right wing that the Predators might take this year. He's not going to be ready to play in the NHL this year, but he's still going to be a top 5 pick, and that would be Porter Martone. He's the big right winger, the best winger in this draft class, widely considered, and there's a good chance he could be on the board at number 5. He's a very physical, bruising type of winger. He plays the game what we've kind of become accustomed to over the years as Predators fans, that grinded out, hard-hitting style of player. Big body, big frame. He's not undersized in the slightest. So, I mean, that could, if they let's say they draft a Porter Martone, that might make it easier to. But also, I also think if the Predators were to trade Marchessault, they would be sending a very clear signal that they realize that they are a far ways away from going deep in the playoffs, and they're kind of waving the white flag and saying, "Hey, we're committing to the 3 to 5 year rebuild plan." Right. You don't trade Marchessault if you think that you're going to run it back next year, which is another slogan that's been thrown around lately, is the Preds are going to try to run it back. If they're trying to run it back, they're not trading Marchessault, is what I'm saying.
And that might be, I mean, I don't think that's like the biggest reason why, but I just don't think it's going to happen. I just think there's too many hurdles to overcome.
There's too many hurdles, yes.
And if it does happen, then I mean,
it is getting, but it is worth talking about. We're talking about it now, and it's not impossible.
I'm not against it at all.
I'm not against it either. I
just practicality speaking, I just don't see it.
Trotz just has to be very careful about not getting burned again in another trade or another move by himself. So we'll see what happens there. Let's move on here and let's do our prospect deep dive. That's a good segue, and that'll take us into our final thoughts on the draft. So when it comes to the prospect deep dive, let me get right to it. First of all, I want to share McKean's Hockey is a very popular scouting page that I like to follow. They do a really good job of really looking at prospects, and they recently ranked all of their prospect pools in the NHL, and for each team, each prospect pool, they put out their top 10 prospects in that prospect pool. So I'm about to put on the screen now what they had to say about the Predators. It was very interesting. I value the work that they do. Been following them for a while. So there it is. There you have it. They ranked the Nashville Predators prospect pool number 17 out of 32 teams. And there you have it. It shouldn't come as a big surprise that their number 1 prospect for the Predators is Tanner Molendyk. And he is the cream of the crop when it comes to Nashville Predators prospects. I mean, I've called him Roman Josi 2.0. He is such a smooth skater. He looks like the type of guy where when he gets to the big leagues, he's going to take off fast. So by far, that is our blue chip prospect. And now that Yaroslav Askarov is gone,
yep.
Tanner Molendyk is our blue chip prospect for the Nashville Predators right now.
Yeah, no, he would definitely be the one that that jumps out. You might can make an argument for Joachim Kemmel, but Molendyk seems to be the one that really is the one who's jumping out as the top.
Yeah, and like when we try to, let's say hi to Mike Twitter. He says, "What's up, guys?" And cups for Ekholm and Arvey. Let's go Oilers. So yeah, some former Preds alumni getting a Stanley Cup would be cool. We love Ekholm. We love Arvidsson. That's a good way to look at it if you're looking for a rooting interest as a Preds fan. I think that's a very fair argument to make on why you would want to go for the Oilers here. Is to see Arvidsson and Ekholm, two very deserving and great players who are very deserving of getting their Stanley Cup. So
Absolutely.
That's cool. Thanks for sharing that. And then also Mike Twitter says, ranked 17 and Admirals go deep in the playoffs each year. Well, that has a lot to do with Carl Taylor.
And they were looking rough early on the year.
And he got an extension, by the way. Carl Taylor's sticking around. He got an extension with the Admirals as their head coach.
Crazy that he never goes and takes an NHL job.
Yeah, I mean, it is crazy. You would think by now. But let's go down this list some more here by McKean's Hockey. NHL Prospects Report ranking the Predators number 17 out of 32 NHL teams. Igor Sirin, who is really just had a outstanding rookie year in the KHL, a very, very difficult league, mind you, as a rookie. This guy has shot up. He did not bring a lot of buzz when he got drafted by the Predators. I mean, it was a very, I want to say a lot of scouts gave the Predators maybe a B. They weren't like jumping out of their seats like, oh my God, what a pick the Predators just made here. But he does play with a high motor. He does play a lot like how the Predators like their players to play. But I'm very encouraged. My stock on Igor Sirin is shot way up after seeing what he's done in the KHL as a rookie. It's been very impressive to watch. He is a long ways away from being in the NHL. He's got another year left on his current contract in the KHL.
It's insane.
So we can revisit this time next year and see what happens there. But as we know, whenever you have a prospect that plays in the KHL, it can get very complicated because that league in and of itself is a very respected league, especially if it's your home country. And you're always trying to figure out how badly does that prospect want to come over to North America and play for you. That's the risk it's the risk you take when you draft a prospect who plays in the KHL already.
Yeah.
But still very encouraging results from Igor Sirin right now. As a center, he plays wing. He's kind of a tweener, but he's a center technically. And then going down the list, number 3 is Matthew Wood. I'm kind of surprised that they put Sirin ahead of Wood on this list, though.
Yeah, I mean, granted, me personally, I've been honest about this before. I don't do deep analysis on the prospects really. I mainly focus on what's going on at the NHL level. But just the fact that Matthew Wood's even played games would make me think that he's got to be higher than Sirin. But yeah, I guess.
Let's talk about Matthew Wood for a second. I mean, when he did get his playing time with the Preds, he got robbed so many times.
Kind of did.
I mean, it takes two hands to count how many times he got robbed of scoring his first NHL goal.
Chances.
The dude's got an outstanding wicked snipe of a shot. He looked very comfortable out there. He looked. I was glad that he got to get his feet wet in the NHL. After the season went off the rails and there was nothing to lose. I think that was really smart for the organization to let him get in there. And then now we get to see him next year play for the Milwaukee Admirals. But to see Joachim Kemmel all the way down at number 4 is a little surprising. I
agree.
My personal list, I would have Kemmel at number 2 behind Molendyk.
Yeah, I probably
And I would actually, another player that I'm surprised is so far down on this list is Ryan Ufko at number 8.
Yeah.
I know you're not a big prospect guy, but I know you've heard Ufko a lot.
I've heard a lot of them. I am happy to see. I also have heard a lot lot of Teddy Stiga. I'm happy to see him up there.
And so Stiga would be in my top 5. That's actually how my list.
That's one of the ones that jumped out to me.
So that's how my list rounds out. Is I would say I would put it as Molendyk, Kemmel, My number 3 would be Matthew Wood. My number 4 would be Ufko, and my number 5 would be Stiga. So, and the only reason I don't have Siren in my top 5 is his scope for making it to the NHL is like literally at least 2 years, probably maybe even 3 realistically.
Yeah.
He is so far down the road that it's hard for me to even like, it's not that he's playing horribly. He just had a great year, but it's just, it's so hard for me to look that far down the road and even make him an impact player for this organization right now. Right. He's under contract for another organization in a whole other league across the world.
I don't know how it works, admittedly. When you sign a contract in the KHL, do you have to like play it out, or can you go to the North America if you want?
You kind of have to. I mean, the way I understand is you have to sorry, Mike Twitter's laughing. He's got me laughing because he brought up the old inside joke of Spiza, Luca Spiza was the old inside joke.
Yeah, I remember you're talking about.
Mike Twitter just said, I thought Chad said Spiza there for a second. Thank you for bringing in the old inside joke.
Talk about deja vu.
And Rich, I miss you a ton, man. I hope you're doing good. You've been on Twitter a little bit lately. I've loved hearing from you again. But that was the old inside joke with this podcast from the early days was we always had to make a Luca Spiza reference. Luca Spiza played 1 game for the Nashville Predators, and then he moved to the Rich House basement, and he might still live down there eating Cheetos and playing video games all day. I really don't know whatever happened to Luca Spiza, but yeah, great to bring up that old inside joke. All right, I got to refocus here. All right, but yeah, that's the list there. Igor Siren is so far away from being in this league, so I don't put him in my top 5 for that reason. Matthew Wood's a really interesting one. He's definitely going to be in the mix in training camp to make this roster to start next season, but he would have to really overtake. He would have to overtake Cole Smith to make the team. He would have to overtake some of the other prospects. So we'll see what happens with Matthew Wood. I think Matthew Woods probably needs a little bit more polishing in the AHL before he becomes an everyday NHL player, though.
Yeah.
But it was very encouraging what he did do in a small sample size.
Absolutely.
In the NHL. So let me kind of round this all out here. The Preds prospect pool is not very deep right now. You don't have a lot of franchise-changing guys in the prospect pool right now, unless someone out of nowhere pops up, which is always possible.
Right.
We're not saying that can't happen, but as it looks right now, the Predators really got to reload. And the fact that it sucks that the NHL draft lottery did not go their way. They got the worst possible drawing to land at number 5. And I'm seeing more and more, and you see it with the volatility in these mock drafts. There is literally no agreement after the top 2 picks among all these mock drafts. No one can agree on where James Higgins is going to go. No one can agree on where Caleb Denoyer is going to go. No one can agree on where they've got all these Roger McQueen is an X factor where no one can agree on where he's going to go. So some team might decide to take a reach for him. He has injury problems. That's what's dropped his stock. But like you've got all these Porter Martone's another one. You got Anton Frondell, the Swedish prospect. You've got who's a center no one can agree on these prospects outside of the top 2. Yeah. And that makes me really nervous as a Preds fan.
I saw a mock today where they had James Higgins at number 5 for us.
I would be happy with that. Yeah. If Higgins falls to number 5, I'm not saying we throw a parade on Broadway, but we are definitely happy about it.
No, we'd be satisfied.
Because Higgins is he could be a top 3, top 2 talent. Right. He could be, but he's also this past year was a little bit of a down year. His stock dropped a little bit. This past year, he wasn't as dominant in situations you would like him to be in. But you know, look, I think Higgins could end up being a franchise-changing top 6 center. Yeah. So if he falls to number 5, you take him. I don't think he's going to fall to number 5. I really don't. I think the Blackhawks are going to take James Higgins. That's just me personally.
We're going to Blackhawks.
I think for the Preds, it's going to come down to Porter Martone, the physical, bruising, big-bodied right winger, or it's going to be Caleb Denoyer, who could be around. He's been floated as high as number 3. Some people think Denoyer is not even a top 10 draft pick. That's the volatility and polarization of Caleb Denoyer. The Preds love their Swedish guys. I could see them taking a Swede and taking Frondell. I think it comes down to those 3 guys. Denoyer.
They do love their Swedes.
I think it comes down to Frondell, Frondell or Denoyer. They're both centers, so that's good. Or they take the right winger, Porter Martone, who really fits the style that Trotz and Brunette want to build, which is getting bigger and more physical. And Porter Martone is that type of guy. He's the only guy really that plays that way in this draft class this high up. So it's going to be one of those 3, in my opinion. If Hagens falls to number 5, for 1, I'll be completely shocked. And 2, I will be beating the table saying draft James Hagens. Draft the American national team star, the junior team. Take James Hagens. He will put butts in seats. The Preds will be the talk of the draft outside of the top 2 if they steal James Hagens at number 5. I feel really strongly about that.
That'd be awesome.
And then let's also remember that the Preds have 2 more draft picks.
Yeah.
In the first round. I mean, it's really something that they've got 2 picks outside the top 20.
They got 6 in the top 100. And I just wrote an article about this. I just wrote an article saying,
so creative. Expand on that.
Yeah. No, I just wrote an article for Predlines basically talking about the draft capital we have and basically saying, look, we got 6 picks in the top 100. Who's saying we need to use them all? Like, yeah, our prospect pool isn't so deep right now, but right, I mean, we need blue chip talent as much as anything too. So why don't you, potentially, use the draft picks to either maybe move up in the draft? I believe it was Matthew Marte or Jordan Manning, whoever it was. Predlines wrote about San Jose potentially being open to making a move. You never know where that could go. Or maybe you use one of those first rounders and help trade for a guy like Marco Rossi, who's on the market.
Yes.
I imagine Trevor Zegras maybe could still be on the market, which I'll tell you, I'm not done talking about that yet. I might still have something coming there.
Well, let's do it. We got time.
Yeah.
Because we still got to talk about the depth free agency too.
Yeah.
But Marco Rossi, I'm glad you brought him up because I was going to forget, and I'm actually pretty passionate about this. I don't think it's going to happen. I think there's going to be too many teams. There's probably going to be too many teams in the sweepstakes for Rossi, and but look, Rossi. It's reported that Rossi's looking for a 7x7 contract, so right in line with what Brady Shea is making right now. But we're talking about young 23-year-old centers with high ceilings do not come on the trade market very often. I cannot stress this enough. So at the very least, Barry Trotz better be paying attention right now.
No, absolutely. Again, I'm still, I mean, I'm going to hint at a future maybe article coming because I'm still passionate about potentially Trevor Zegras, if the Preds might want to trade for him. But again, also maybe even move in the draft. There's things you could do with your picks.
And having those 2 additional first-round picks can definitely be part of a trade package to at least make an offer for somebody.
Absolutely.
I mean, absolutely. Especially a draft day trade for the Predators seems more likely than not, considering they have 3 first-round picks. Now, it might not be an earth-shattering trade, but I find it hard to believe that the Predators are going to use all 3 picks in round 1.
I mean, the Preds had a bunch of picks last year, and I think actually no, they didn't use them all straight because I believe they traded one of the second rounders for Andrew Gibson. But like last year, I will say I was hoping that Trotz would be a little more creative than he was.
And they got 2 picks in the second round this year as well. And here's another thing. Here's another reason why I think they might look to move one of those first round draft picks outside the top 20. this draft class is not being rated as very strong. It's being rated below average overall.
Right.
Very top heavy and drops off a cliff after you get out of the top 10. That's just what the scouts are saying. So that might incline the Predators to be willing to deal. If someone's willing to deal, there might be a team out there who they might have a scout for this team who really, really likes somebody when the Preds come up to pick. And they might pick up that phone and call Trotz and be like, hey, there's a certain guy we like. We want your pick. We'll give you this. Let's swap picks. The Preds move back a little bit in the draft because they don't like anybody at the draft at that spot in the draft anyway.
That's fair.
And then maybe you can pull a prospect. Maybe there's a prospect out there that Trotz really likes in someone else's system out there. That's the wheeling and dealing that I'm going to be looking for Trotz to do here. He needs to build up this prospect pool. He needs to, and if he doesn't feel strongly about this year's draft class, once he makes that 5th overall pick, I think he needs to look to deal definitely one of those 2 picks in the first round.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there might be a guy they really like, and they might decide to keep all 3 picks. But it's going to be fascinating to watch. This is going to be a really intriguing draft to watch because I can't remember a draft in recent memory where there's no agreement outside of the top 2. It's not gonna be chalk. It's gonna be a lot of suspense. And if you're just a really diehard hockey fan and you love to see where these prospects end up going, it's gonna be fun to watch. And so we'll see what happens with the Predators there. They really desperately need to hit a home run with this 5th overall pick. They haven't picked in this position very often in their history because they've always been a good regular season team. So we just endured a nightmare of a season full of pain and misery. We deserve a blue chip prospect out of this draft.
We deserve something good. Something good.
We really do.
Something good.
All right. So with that, I got to get the DraftKings read in real quick.
I was wondering when you were going to do that.
Sorry, DraftKings. We went on rants, but we're going to make up for it here. So the fastest game on ice just hit another gear. Welcome to the Stanley Cup playoffs, where legends are made and every shift could turn the tide. And now, with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL, you can take every slap shot, breakaway, and overtime thriller to the next level. And we can expect a lot of that in this upcoming Stanley Cup final between the Panthers and the Oilers, which is game 1 is tomorrow night, Wednesday. We're on Stanley Cup final eve tonight, recording tonight, episode 269. And so new to betting on the Stanley Cup playoffs, you're in for an exciting time. Getting started is a breeze. Fire up the DraftKings Sportsbook app. Pick your team to win. So you got Panthers, you got Oilers. Lock in your wager, and you're off to the races. It's fast, simple. It puts you right in the middle of the action. Let me get the DraftKings Sportsbook app fired up on my phone here, and let's see what they are saying right now about the Stanley Cup final. My first time reacting to this. And so right now, Oilers are the home team in game 1. Right now, the money line is really, really tight. You got the Oilers as slight favorites, according to DraftKings, at a minus 130. You can take the Panthers at a plus 110. So a very, very tight betting odds, as you would expect. The over-under is 6.5 goals. So if you're feeling like Max and thinking this is going to be a defensive slugfest, you might want to take the under there.
What did that say? What was that said again?
The over-under is 6.5 goals.
Take the under. Take the under.
We don't give betting advice on this podcast.
I never give betting advice, but take the under.
I mean, unless Skinner just decides to have one of those random names.
But with how defensively well the Oilers are
You're
playing,
right. But anyway, so that's what we got there.
People talk about, Skinner playing well, but the Oilers playing again. I'm not going to go on you're doing the sponsor. I'm not going to go on a tangent here.
No, you're fine. I mean, this is what we're talking here. So yeah, that's what DraftKings has for you. As you would expect, it is a very, very tight betting line for the Oilers and the Panthers. So with that said, we got our promo code THPN going for you right now. Here's the kicker. New customers who bet just $5, that's all you got to put on the line, will score $300 in bonus bets if their wager hits. That's way higher. They're upping the ante. Normally it's $200. Now they got $300 in bonus bets. All you got to do is put $5 up. That's right. Turn $5 into playoff payout. So download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use promo code THPN. That's promo code THPN to unlock $300 in bonus bets when your $5 bet wins. Only at DraftKings Sportsbook. The crown is yours. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 8778-HOPENY or text HOPENY. That's 467-369 in Connecticut. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly on behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas. 21 plus age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bet must win to receive reward, and bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/audio. Copyright 2025 NHL. $300 in bonus bets. That's juicy right there for $5 bet. All right. Thank you to DraftKings for being the OG sponsor to the Catfish and Ice podcast and the Hockey Podcast Network. Let's get our final segment of the night going, and that is free agent shopping list for depth players, because I don't think the Preds are going to change their top six too much, at least not to start the season. Do you see any dramatic changes to the top six before we start talking about depth players?
I mean, if there's any changes that are going to be made, it's going to be due to players going out, not new ones coming in, I would say.
Yeah, I agree.
Again, maybe if you trade for maybe a Trevor Zegras or a Marco Rossi, but again, that's who knows that happens. I can want it all I want, but it may not end up happening. So yeah, I'm kind of with you. I tend to, at least I will say, you're not going to find any major changes in free agency. That's what the discussion's all about.
To get a player like Rossi or Marner or the big guys, I mean, those aren't depth players, obviously. So, I mean, but
Marner would be the one exception, but let's be real.
Yeah, that's definitely not happening.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, we kind of talked about Marner in the last episode. We did a whole segment on that.
Yeah.
It's looking more and more clear that where he's going to go. Utah is a big.
I would actually love that. That would be awesome, I think.
And it actually makes total sense for Utah because they're rebranded. Yeah. They have rebranded. They're called the Mammoth.
Is going to love him.
It would be a really
going
smart.
To embrace him, and he's going to be like a god out there.
Yeah, we already joked he'll get a statue before he plays his first game.
Right. I don't remember if we talked on the last podcast and that, but I saw the Marner to Utah stuff being thrown out there, and I think that would be insane. You're
seeing Vegas out there a lot too.
At least it wouldn't be Chicago.
I would be pretty upset though if
I would crash and burn if it went to Chicago.
So I'm gonna put it on the screen here. This is from Spot Track. They got all the free agents this year for 2025. For our YouTube viewers, I like to keep it interactive, and I like you to see what we're seeing. So let's get it up there so we can all go through it together. So there you have it, and we're gonna have to scroll down this list to find our depth players. But you see at the top there, this list is ranked in terms of AAV. So John Tavares, who's probably staying with Toronto.
And he will not get that much money again.
Is at the top of the list. Jamie Benn's a big one. But let's scroll further down. Let's talk about positions first. If the Preds want to get depth players, do you think defense or forwards are more important to get depth guys right now, Max?
It's hard. I think there's a lot of weakness. There's a lot of weaknesses on this roster on both sides, especially the right side of the Preds defense. And as far as, where I see them addressing it, I could see them going in different few ways. And I'll kind of list off a few players I thought on my mind. I believe I mentioned an episode ago or a few ago, someone like Henry Jokiharju, and I'd be lying if I knew if I really knew if he was truly good or not. But I do know he's one of those guys. He's young enough to where he potentially could be a guy for the future. And if he's not, no big deal. He played also big minutes when he was in Boston at the end of last year, so that's something there. I mean, he seems like a capable defenseman. Dante Fabro is a free agent.
That's mine.
That would be one way for Trotz to atone for one of his sins.
Let's have a reunion.
Yeah, I'm sure Dante Fabro would never want to do that, though.
I don't know. I mean, you got to understand, Dante Fabro still has a lot of love for this locker room.
Yeah, that's true.
And I mean, even though it was, I don't think he left on totally bad blood, though. It was definitely
not with his teammates.
We definitely ended up with egg on our face. We definitely it was an awful look to waive Dante Fabro.
Right.
But it wasn't like it was high drama. It wasn't like there was like backstabbing.
No.
I think Dante Fabro, the organization that drafted him and cultivated him and brought him up, if it was the right situation, I think he'd be willing to come back here. I really do.
Yeah.
But I mean, I would think Columbus keeps him.
Yeah. I would hope I would love if what you said ends up being right. But yeah, I mean, that's one guy I thought of. One guy I thought of as a potential depth piece. And I will say, I might need to talk to people who have watched him on his teams because I know his underlying numbers are not very good. At least haven't been the past few years. Jack Roslovic, a guy who can play center. He's fast.
Definitely.
He would provide healthy competition.
There he is right here.
Stechkov.
That's right here.
I would, and you wouldn't sign him very long. He could be a stopgap guy. That's one that if the Preds sign, it might be like, okay.
I like that. That's a good one. I'm glad you brought him up because I was also thinking about him. 28 years old. I think you can get him for, I'm thinking like what, 4 or 5 million maybe?
If even that. Yeah, I certainly don't.
You got to think though, Max, with the salary cap going up, these players are going to ask for more than what we're used to asking for.
That's true. I mean, me personally, if he wants more than I wouldn't say if he wants more than 4, I'd be like,
you have to kind of reset the market value. It's going to be really tricky these next couple of years to figure out what market value is.
It also depends on the term. So if it's like 2 years, like $4 million a year, okay, that's manageable. But if we're doing anything like more than 3 years and like $4 million a year, I'd be like, we'll just figure it out with what we have.
And it is manageable because I mean, it's not that as if the Predators are cash strapped and they don't have any money to spend. They can't. It's going to be hard for them to go big game hunting, and we both agree that we don't want them to go big game.
Not in free agency, at least.
They can definitely make moves, and for depth purposes, they can make some moves, which is the whole purpose of this segment. I think they will make some moves.
One of my buddies brought up potentially a guy like Victor Olofsson, who's not even a Preds fan, but he's like, that could be an interesting add as a pure depth guy, and he won't be expensive. I
think the Predators are going to definitely need to make some tweaks to their defense. I don't like the depth of their defense right now, and I'm going to
on the left side, I think it's pretty good. The right side, it's absolutely terrible.
Yeah, so I mean, there's some guys I have brought up over the offseason. Here's another one. What about Ryan Donato?
Yeah, I could see that too.
He's another cheap center that you could get. The thing about Ryan Donato, and he's a player that I don't think is staying with his current team. I think he's going to go somewhere else. I don't know why they didn't
trade him at the deadline.
I think he's going to go somewhere else. He is banking on himself. He just had a huge breakout outlying career year. And we've seen this story before where guys have insane bloated shooting percentages and it gets them a really good new contract and then they go right back down to reality. That's the risk you take with Ryan Donato. But he does play center. He is a need. He dresses a position of need. I think that's a player the Predators should inquire about, and I think they will this offseason. Pius Suter, what about him?
Potentially. I liked him. I remember I liked him when he was first entering the league.
Yeah. I mean, he's one that I think he's another one where it looks like he is not staying with he's not staying with the Canucks.
Like 4 years ago, back when it was, I actually wrote an article on Predline saying, hey, he could be a good ad.
So he's another one to keep an eye on if the Predators are looking to add a center to their depth. Because let's be honest about something. Colton Sissons needs to be playing wing at this point in his career. He's not a true center
I mean,
anymore.
he has 1 year left on his deal. Like, should he even be on the team this coming year? I mean, I'm not going
I don't
to
know.
say Colton Sisson should not be on this team, but it's something you got to think about.
You're kind of trying to figure out who's going to be your third line center, if you ask me, because I think Michael McCarron serves his purpose on the fourth line as a center. I don't think you have to really rush to replace him. There's a huge gaping hole on the third line for me when it comes to addressing in free agency a depth player. I think that's the hole you're trying to fill, is who's going to play the third line center role, because the top six is, unless you go get a Rossi, like we talked about, the top six, I could see Ryan Donato maybe playing a second line center role for a rebuilding team. But for the most part, it looks like the Predators are going to have to hope that Fedor Svechkov is ready. And if you're a rebuilding team, I'm totally okay with putting Svechkov in that role. Or does Stamkos take second line center role again? That's something we can address later in the offseason. But I do think there's a huge void to be filled when it comes to shopping for a depth center. So that's kind of where I'm at with that. But when it comes to defense, they got to address the right side, like you said, Max.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And there's just not a lot of guys out there.
No, there's not.
As you're seeing. I like Nick Perbeeks of the Tampa Bay Lightning as a depth guy you could sign in free agency. He plays really – he has a pretty good defensive game to him. He's a defensive defenseman. He can kill penalties. He fits in that age range that you would like to get. He's played for a good organization for a long time. A lot of Tampa Bay Lightning fans really like him down here. So he's a guy that you could add as a depth guy who would battle for a spot in training camp. And you would get him for super cheap. He'd be very affordable.
Right. Yep.
There's Victor Olofsson, the guy you just brought up.
Yep.
Oliver Shillington, Anaheim. But he's a left shot defenseman. Perbeeks is a right shot defenseman. That's another reason why I like him, because he would fill that role.
He's young.
But there's not a lot, as you can see. As we keep going further and further down, it gets really thin after that. Once you get further down, you start seeing a lot of guys in their 30s, something the Predators don't need to be really looking at right now. And then as you get further down this list, as we go down, it starts becoming guys who, if you sign any of these guys, they'll be lucky to even win a spot out of training camp. They might be waived before the season even starts.
Right.
So that's kind of where we're at. There's not a lot out there is the point I'm making at.
Right.
To even be a big-time free agency team this year.
Yeah.
I think the Predators, for the most part, I'm sticking true to this. I think for the most part, other than a couple very small moves here and there, I think the Predators are largely going to be the same team they were last year in terms of what they have on paper.
Right. No, absolutely. No, I agree. And also just a note, it looks like my screen has been frozen, but at least it seems I can still hear me, Chad. So technical difficulties.
I can hear you, which is perfect for the podcast, the audio version. That's what matters. And you're frozen with a really funny look on your face.
Yeah, I'm definitely I'm mid sentence there.
I think that look on your face is basically encapsulates what we just went through this past season with the Nashville Predators. You have a look of disgust.
I got a picture of that. That's funny as hell.
You have a look of disgust of what the Predators put us through this past year.
That was like all my teams this year.
Yeah. Every time you watch the Predators last year, that's pretty much the look we all had on our faces. All right. So with that said, it's been a really fun episode. This has been episode 269 of Catfish and Ice, brought to you by DraftKings. Again, we got the $300 in bonus bets on the line. Get your bet in before game one on Wednesday, tomorrow night, or tonight, if you're listening this morning as we upload the podcast to Spotify and Apple. If you're listening this Wednesday morning, you got time to put down your $5 bet as a new user of DraftKings to get $300 in bonus bets. Take the Panthers, take the Oilers, and have a lot of fun with it, of course, responsibly. And, it's been fun. So we're going to have a good time watching this Stanley Cup final. Our next episode will be sometime during the Stanley Cup final to talk about what's going on. Hope to get you another episode next week. And then we'll get closer and closer to the draft, and we'll wait and see what else happens. We always know that after the Stanley Cup final concludes, we get a little bit of a break, and then that's when all the offseason shenanigans start happening, which is always fun. So until then, thank you for joining us, everybody. Thank you for listening. We appreciate all of you. This has been Catfish on Ice, episode 269, with your hosts, Chad Minton and Max Greenberg. Frozen in time, Max Greenberg over there.
Exactly.
All right. Take care, everybody. See you later.
See you guys.